This is Alan Olson's America Dreams, the keys to life success, where we talk about how to live the life that you want to live.
And this is Nadine Camara, where we speak about what are your dreams, what do you want out of life, and what defines success.
Well, Nadine, we got another great show today. We're going to be talking with Scott Joyner. He's an OBGYN practicing in the Heartland of America. And he's going to talk about the state of healthcare today.
Well, we'll be excited. I'm excited to hear from him. I'm sure he'll have lots of interesting insight about some of the healthcare laws that are being passed.
You know, it's one thing, you never really think about healthcare until you need it.
Yes. And when you do, you get it. It's a great burden and worry. Oh. How are we going to afford it with these increasing costs?
Well, absolutely. And you want to make sure that you got the best and the brightest there working on you, and that you got a quick fix. You know?
Right. So,
but let's go into talking about it. I want to do a leadership moment here and becoming self-reliant. You know, 2004, when they had the tsunami that struck Southeast Asia, there was a 10-year girl that saved almost 100 people because she was prepared. She had paid attention during a geography lesson that her teacher gave a few weeks earlier about the coming of a tsunami, showing that, when the ocean starts rolling out to sea, and the land becomes dry, you head for higher ground. And the girl saw this happening, and she said, we need to get everyone to high ground, not knowing what was about to come. So she was in a place called Macau Beach in Thailand. She recognized the warning sign that her teacher had given her, and she was able to tell her parents, who helped to warn others to evacuate the beach. And this was one of the few beaches in Thailand that did not have any injuries from the resulting tsunami. So, what can we learn from this story? Well, if we're prepared, we'll be able to face and survive the challenges that life brings us.
Well, that's an interesting story, Alan. I think it's especially important, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we are prone to earthquakes and lots of faults going through our area, to have disaster preparedness. And from my understanding, we have some of the best disaster preparedness programs in the nation right here.
Well, it's good to know, but I remember back in 1989 when we had the big earthquake, and what was that, 7.1? I don't remember.
It was big.
It was. All I remember is that the floor rose up 2 feet, under me, and it was within a matter of hours that all the grocery store shelves were cleared out. There was no power. The transportation system was in havoc, and my mind goes back to the days. Say, if something big happened today, would I be prepared? Could I face this?
Right, and if we live, especially if you live in hurricane country, where there's lots of hurricanes, earthquake country, where there's lots of earthquakes, tsunami, the importance of being prepared and having a plan as how to contact your children, emergency backpacks, perhaps, with emergency supplies. Many times, contact out of the area. Everybody has a number where they can contact a family member, perhaps on the East Coast or even out of the country, so they could all report in if they're separated. All of these things are important to have in place prior to be prepared and be self-reliant.
So life, we're most content when we are practicing the principles of self-reliance. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "A political victory, a rise in rents, a recovery of your sick, or the return of an absent friend, or some other quite external event raises your spirits, and you think good days are preparing for you. Do not believe it. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of the principle from self-reliance."
Right, and being prepared, most especially, huh?
I think everyone
relying on yourself.
I think everyone out there ought to have a 72-hour kit.
Oh, yes. And, they're now available online. You can put in 72-hour emergency kit, and you could find a plethora of items to purchase.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife has got into this thing about the backpacks, and so she has an emergency backpack. And this last week I said, honey, why are all the backpacks by the back door? She goes, "Oh, that's the emergency backpack. If we need to there's some type of emergency, we can grab the backpack and run. We got, food supplied in there, clothes, and blah, blah." I said, "Dear, I can't open the back door. Can we put them somewhere else?" So, but it was a reminder about, that always thinking ahead, being prepared in case something did happen. There was that peace of mind that was coming in there.
I always find, for me, I like to put it in my vehicle, in my trunk. I had purchased this, I don't know, back, it was a $5 kit from Washington Hospital here in Fremont. Now, it's outdated, the foods expire. But it was a 3-day emergency kit, and I kept it in my vehicle because I worked across the bay, and I went across a bridge. And I thought, you never know when I might need this, and what better place if there's an earthquake. The chances of my trunk getting smashed are hopefully less, and the chances of me being near my car will probably be greater than me near my home because I'm always gone from home at work, etc. So I felt that in my vehicle would be the best place to store something like that.
Well, you think about it too. If something major did happen and we lost power, so you couldn't get it to an ATM machine, you couldn't get to use a credit card, the cash registers wouldn't work. Are you in a position that you could survive without just staying put where you're at for 72 hours until the power could get restored, or what needs to be done?
Yeah, and they have a lot of great items. For instance, one of my neighbors, for Christmas, I live in a court, and for Christmas they gave these crank flashlights where they don't need batteries. You just crank them up and they work terrifically. I believe they're LED lights, so they're very bright. And what a great Christmas gift to give to your neighbors, so that if we do have a power outage, or if there is an earthquake, or if there is some act of God that creates the need for us to have storage or emergency light, we have that. The only thing you have to remember is to crank it. You have to crank it at least once or twice a year to make sure it remains workable. But what a great gift to give everybody something an emergency kit. I did that once for my nieces. When I bought that one for my car, I gave each of my nieces and my nephew an emergency kit to place in their car, so that you never know, but they have it there to be prepared and be self-reliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's always good. Just think ahead. What would you do? As a test run, could you, if you took 72 hours out, survive on what you had around?
So what are your suggestions, Alan, for individuals?
I think people should go through a dry run. They should think about, do they have the things in need? I was looking at the local electronics store. They now have these walkie-talkies that go up to 31 miles. And I was thinking, if the cell phone towers got knocked out, or infrastructure, wouldn't it be nice to have a little walkie-talkie around that you could communicate with family members or loved ones? That's often the big thing. And when something like that happens, you want to call home. You want to see, is everyone right? And all of a sudden the phone lines will be jammed. Can't get through.
Right.
So, putting an emergency plan together, if you have children at home, telling the children, okay, this is what you should do if something happens, and making sure you have enough food and water on hand, clothing items. I think having an extra can of propane in the back, and so that you could cook outdoors.
Right, and even water storage. We never know when, the need for water is great, especially if water pipes get broken, and you're unable to find a well nearby, especially in big cities. So all those things are important to have. So
staying prepared and being self-reliant, that's, thought for the day. We'll be right back after these messages. We're going to have Scott Joyner joining us on Healthcare in America, the state of healthcare today. Welcome back. We have here today Scott Joyner. Scott's an OBGYN practicing in Heartland of America. at Heartland Women's Healthcare. Scott, how long have you been in the healthcare industry?
I've been doing obstetrics and gynecology for about the last 17 years.
17 years. Wow. That's what changes have you seen over the years?
Well, I think the biggest changes is how we do surgery these days. We do it through very small incisions. The recovery time is much faster. From the time of being a resident to today, I've seen just vastly improved surgical technique, technology, things that have made recovery and moving on with life shortly after surgery much easier and accessible.
Well,
Very, very interesting. Scott, what are some? What do you think that the healthcare industry will continue to see with these advancements?
Well, like anything, anytime you have advancements in technology, they come with a price, and I think that's what's trying to be sorted out at this point is the robot and the other laparoscopic things that are happening, at least in my specialty and a number of specialties, are much more expensive. They're more expensive for the hospitals, they're more expensive for the basic costs of just the durable goods that they use are expensive. So the challenge today is to balance those between outcomes and expense to what we can do economically, and I think that'll be the challenge of the future.
Yeah, it really seems interesting, the world that we live in at the time we see a lot of advancements in technology and in healthcare and everything else, and the majority of America, that baby boomer bubble, it still continues to grow old.
Right.
So, have you felt some? I guess with that in mind, that the staffing and resources, have you felt that that's been adequate?
That's always a challenge, especially in rural America, essentially where I practice. It's difficult for the hospitals to have the resources to take care of the folks who come in who are, they're wanting and demanding the technology that you get in a big city, but in rural America, and that's a balancing act. I think that's going to be continuing to be more difficult to obtain. Their balance or their budgets, I guess, haven't improved. They've gotten worse. It's more difficult to balance the costs and the demands, and in our own practice, we see the same thing. So I don't think that's going to change anytime real soon.
I don't know how they're going to really solve this, the healthcare situation, because you're dealing at the same time. Your practice is dealing with the OBGYN aspect, but we're dealing with this huge demographic bubble, as going out. So, one of the things I heard, and I don't know the truth to this, I'm not a physician, but someone says that they have a lot of solutions for healthcare technologies that really haven't come and been released yet. But let me ask you the question. Have you seen new medicines or new type of procedures come out that kind of shorten the time of the need for?
Oh, definitely, especially if you want to just talk about the older population. You see a lot of, in my case, you see a lot of pelvic floor prolapse and those kind of things. We've definitely improved that over, tenfold the procedures we do today as far as results that we did 10 years ago. They're shorter, they're same day procedures, they come and go. They used to be in the hospital for a couple days. Now they come, they spend 2 or 3 hours and they go home, and the results are better. So that's directly affecting quality of life in the older population that I see, and it's an amazing thing, but it also has a cost, and you have to balance that.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, what is some of the most rewarding parts of your career? What has been some highlights?
Well, of course, anytime you can bring a baby into the world and help that happen safely and have the experience that women are looking for, that's always a highlight in anybody's life. It's hard for me to, or I think anyone, to look at a newborn baby and not kind of remind yourself how lucky we are. And then just again to see the ability of women, in my case, women to be able to come in and be able to be taken care of, to have short recovery times, and to go on with their life. That's very rewarding. 17 years ago, we did things I thought well, but they definitely aren't as efficient and as as helping women get back to their own life quicker and their families and their responsibilities, because as you know, life hasn't gotten any easier. It's gotten more difficult and more challenging, and if we can get people back to their lives quicker, that's, I think, is really our goal.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Over the course of a year, so I watched 7 babies, our children come into the world, and every process seemed a little bit, better, a little bit quicker. The first one, my wife got to stay in the hospital for 2 days. The last one, she was there for 4 hours.
Really?
But the bill was 3 times the price. So, it's, I can see the advancements in there, but, but as you forecast into the future, where do you think we're going with all this?
Well, I mean, there's an inevitable clash between, the technology that's going to be driven and the cost, and to all the individuals who want that procedure. I mean, there's only so many robots right now, and if everybody wants to have robotic surgery, it takes longer, it's more expensive. It's better for some things. It's kind of overkill for other things if you're using it for things that could just be done in another way. That's always the problem with new technologies. Everybody wants it, but it may not necessarily be the best thing for you. And but if it's marketed that way, then surely you must have this too. So I see a little bit of that, and I think that will continue to be a problem as technology. Anytime a new technology comes on board, it's always more expensive, and hopefully over time it'll become streamlined and more efficient and more economical. But I'm not sure that that's going to be necessarily the case in rural America or in America at large, where the costs continue to go up, and to provide care, just basic care for each patient that comes in the hospital, and the reimbursements will go down. At some point you have to make those marry up, and I don't know that I can see that anytime soon.
You mentioned robotic surgery. Are you kidding? You use a robot to
right.
And how does that work?
Well, it's like a panel, and it's almost like a roller ball and
a video game,
similar.
Wow!
And you hook up the robot to the patient, and then you manipulate the arms, and it's pretty impressive. It definitely can do things that human beings, traditional laparoscopic kind of procedures, at least at this point, can't do. So, it's definitely has its place.
So you're talking about a lower margin of error because the hand will be much steadier as you...
Well, yeah, I think there's some stability issues. You can the ports allow you to do 360-degree rotations with the instruments. I think your visualization can be better spent. But we see technology coming along where there's also just with using a traditional camera with a one-port operating scope that I think you can accomplish almost the same things at much lower the cost. And as we improve that, I think that you'll see I think that there's that divergence between the cost of the robot and then the cost of single incision, and I think that's where we're headed.
Well, so it sounds like we're going in the right direction, and getting better at what we do.
I think we definitely are better today than we were, even 5 years ago.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. We're here today with Scott Joyner. Scott's an OBGYN. He's practicing women's health care in the Heartland of America. Scott, before this we were talking about some of the developments in healthcare. Where do you think the industry is heading these days, and what's the big discussion about this Obamacare, and how does that affect the medical profession?
I mean, as far as I can see, it's going to be more difficult to practice medicine in America based on just the cost constraints to begin with. Our costs are going up, and our reimbursements are going down. Our malpractice insurance is going up, at least in the state I live in. The basic ability to go and see patients and to provide jobs and to keep the lights on, all those things, those are all going up. All my base costs of providing care, which is I love to do and which is my responsibility, and I like being an obstetrician gynecologist, but at some point at the end of the day, you have to make a living as well, and you have to be able to pay the bills and the people that work for you, and provide for future improvements in your practice and those kind of things. And I think it's only going to become more difficult the way the future looks, and under the current regime that we have, who's trying to model healthcare after something I don't really understand.
So Scott, basically your overhead is going up.
Absolutely.
And what you're getting paid it's decreasing because the overhead is increasing. So how about other doctors that you know in your area of Illinois? Do they also feel the same? Are they also against Obamacare, or do you know any doctors that are for it?
I don't know any doctors that are for it. I just none of us see the ability that a government-run healthcare system can be more efficient, that can be more economical, that can meet the costs, our costs, and provide the kind of care we're currently providing. I don't think any of us can see how that's possible. We don't see it.
It seems like this is a tug of war then between the insurance industry for medical reimbursements and the escalating costs. I guess what's your highest cost in the practicing area right now?
We have costs, malpractice insurance. I mean, those kind of things. The costs of just
the hospital.
The hospital is patients will end up. The hospital costs have definitely gone up. Mm-hmm. We have complaints about that all the time. I got my bill, and actually the doctor's bill is really very minuscule compared to what the hospital bill is.
That's what I've noticed.
I mean, it's not like we're getting the lion's share of the money from their experience. I know sometimes they think that we walk away with a large portion, and ours is minimal compared to the whole bill in the picture. But I understand the hospital situation is too. Their costs have all gone up, so it's a tug of war between how they can make their margins improve and be better able to provide care and do a better job as well. So I'm not trying to throw hospitals underneath the bus here, but in the same sense, sometimes that doctors always are that we're greedy and we only are about the buck, which is rarely the case because most of us are trying to just do the best job we can, but at the end of the day, we have to make a living.
Well, and also I think that the other argument there is we want the best physicians out there. For if your life's on the line, you don't want someone that decided on a whim that they go get their degree in medicine. You want the best and the brightest out there.
I think most of us really try to do the best job we can.
Yeah, and needless to say that requires also that you pay. For the talent. There was a couple years ago back in Silicon Valley, when the .com was just booming, all sorts of kids were checking out of Stanford to go do their companies rather than do the degrees because they found that there was more money on the other, another track there. So
about the Obama healthcare law, as you stated, you feel that doctors are going to lose revenue or continue to lose revenue. What about insurance companies or the healthcare industry as a whole? Do you think they will have continue to lose revenue as well?
Well, I mean, any company always passes their costs on to the consumer. So, if you can. And so I think it's just a fantasy to think that your insurance costs aren't going to go up. We've seen them go up, and they'll continue to go up. They have to, if they have to figure out to make those margins to work, and that's the only way to do it.
So let's talk about the business model, because obviously there's you're competing with limited costs. There's only so much in the pool of reimbursement money. But what are some of the things from a physician practice that you do that you're doing to kind of combat the whole challenge of Obamacare?
Well, obviously you have to look at how you provide care and how you can cut back on your expenses. We hire less. We hire less people. I mean, we try to get the most out of the people that we've already employed. Just because you can't take on the additional costs of more employees with more benefits and all those things that drive up your costs. So you look at, you tighten up your expenses and your budgets and all of those things that. Where you can to make it work. It's just like any other business. You have to figure out you can't cut costs in taking care of the patient because then you can't do that. So you have to look at the things you need or don't need and how to get those down and look for the best deals like anyone else.
So I had a friend come to me and he said, okay, under this new Obamacare, he says basically the way that it's written, he said the government basically can decide who lives and who dies, depending on whether they're going to pay for a procedure or not. What do you say to that? Do they tie the doctor's hands essentially, or?
I don't have all the details, but you're going to have a two-tier system. I mean, how can you not? There will be people who will be able to afford to pay for other services in healthcare. They're going to find them, and there will be people that will provide those for additional funds. So, I just don't think that's where America wants to go. I just don't think we want to be there. It's more divisive than I think we should be. I mean,
so controversial issue. Is there any reason why you think Congress exempted themselves from the new health care?
Well, you've got to ask yourself that question. I mean, if it's such a great thing, why wouldn't I want to be involved in it? And those are many questions like that we have to ask about how, what do we want in America? If we want to be another prototype of a European system that then we need to look hard and ask all those questions. I don't think we've done that. I don't think people have been adequately informed. Most people didn't want the health care bill passed. We don't really talk about that much anymore. It got passed without the consent of really the public, and we don't talk about that a whole lot. And I think we should. I think we should really get the facts out there of what this is really going to entail. And I'm not sure everyone's really going to like all the small print, if you will.
Are there any advantages to the Obamacare law? Anything that doctors have seen? Anything positive about the law?
I haven't, again, went through it with the fine-tooth comb, but most of us don't think that anytime you add bureaucracy to a very large enterprise, there's no way to make that efficient, and there's no really way to make it better. Sure, most of us think we can improve on it? Absolutely. Do we think that there are too many people without insurance? We think so. We think that we need to make it available, but also make people responsible for what they're buying and what they're obtaining, and make us all responsible, not just the government.
It also seems that maybe one thing that will come of this is the need for better preventative health care, rather than to wait until the last minute to try and catch things much earlier.
Well, I mean, absolutely. Anytime we can be preventive and prevent disease before we get to have to fix the problem, I mean, that's just definitely a better way to go. I think actually in some ways we've moved in that direction a little in a positive light. The challenge that I see in the future with preventive medicine is that people aren't going to want to pay for those things again. It's like going to be mandated without a payer. So then I'm going to be mandated to do things that are preventive medicine without any payment. And you can't do that. I mean, it's okay for government to come in and say, well, you have to provide, all these services, but yet we're not really going to pay for them. Well, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We're here visiting today with Scott Joyner, an OBGYN practicing in the Heartland of America. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. We're here today visiting with Scott Joyner. He's an OBGYN practicing in the Heartland of America, women's health care. Scott, I heard it's expected that the new health care law may ensure almost 32 million additional citizens, which will have an effect on the emergency room admittance in the hospitals. This means that hospitals will need to make room to accommodate this increased number of potential patients. Consequently, the Obama administration is trying to decrease emergency room visits by over 20% with the new health care law.
Well, Alan, okay, so they decrease emergency room visits, but they increase hospital visits. So then won't that consequently make it if I need to go to the hospital, there's not going to be a bed available for me?
That's interesting. The many changes will come as a result of this new law. In fact, it's I've been sitting in emergency rooms before with one of my kids got a finger slammed in the door and severed the finger, and I was holding the thumb in place, and I said, I need to go see a doctor, and they said, well, just sit down, sir. It was about 20 minutes, and I had about 3 different doctors look at it, and finally we got the right doctor in there, and she turned out fine.
Right.
But man, I was just sweating bullets as a parent,
Right.
trying to get the health care done. So we're looking at these new changes coming as a result of the tax law. Additional insurance allowing 32 million more people in. The Obama administration saying, okay, now we need to keep these people out. Scott, you share with us how this law will affect those who practice in the medical field. With all of these changes that are going to be implemented, what can citizens do to be better self-reliant on healthcare matters?
I think that's an interesting question. There's so many options and available media, informational things on the internet, and that they can be exposed to in their own personal health. But they should also educate themselves on the local resources, the hospitals, the emergency rooms, what's available at each one, because they're not all the same. And to think every hospital is the same, I think is that's a little naive. Each hospital and each community has different resources, and I think you should be aware of who has what and what they have to offer, and if they have heart programs, if they have stroke programs, if their emergency room doctors are board certified, if they have the ability to take care of pediatrics or children. Those are all important questions. I think that the consumer should educate themselves, and also make that aware to your local hospital systems and providers, so that you can have the services that you desire.
So at the end of the day, it's not all the same. You want to make sure that the group that you're practicing with, in other words, that you're coming to the right individual, the right specialty.
Absolutely. And I think today, with the technology we have, it's easy to figure that out. There's so much out there about who's doing what and what's available, and the latest, greatest. Not that those are always the best, but usually you can tell if people are trying to pursue the practice of medicine in the most up-to-date way, and if they're providing that and opportunities for you and your family.
Mm-hmm. So being in rural America, it must be interesting. You don't have the resources that these inner city urban hospitals have. What are you seeing out there? The changes in how you're delivering health care.
Well, and I think that gets to the heart of the conversation that we're having about health care in rural America, because as Americans, we always want the best. We want the most technologically advanced, and yet we're moving to a system that I think is going to make everything mediocre, because that is what it's driving healthcare that way, instead of the excellence that we have always been in the United States and in America, and driving the technology. We're going to then be forced into a system where you get what you get, because you must see everybody for this amount of money, and if you can't provide those services, then I just don't see how they work. I just don't see. Yeah, if we might have 32 million people with health care, but what kind of health care do they have now? Is it the kind of health care that they think everyone should be getting, or is it the kind of health care that only these folks get exposed to because they've driven the market that way? I have my own personal opinion that I think we're going to find the least common denominator, not the best and the brightest.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I did read an article about Britain and their health care, and I can't tell you the percentages off my head, but women with breast cancer in America have over a 90% success rate, whereas if you live in Britain, it's down to 60-something percent. I think those were the numbers, because of their because government-run healthcare, they just aren't providing for certain ages. If you're above a certain age, they just won't provide the services that you need because of the costs. My mother lives in Portugal. She has lived there and back and forth here, and it's the same thing. There are some wonderful things about the government program. She's diabetic. She can get her medicines for free. But then if she goes into the hospital, the wait time to see a doctor and to have more up-to-date technology and services, they're just not there.
There's a list. They're put on a list for surgical procedures, and if you have money, you'll go find someone to do the procedure, and you won't be on the list.
Right. One of her good friends called from Canada, and I was talking to her about the healthcare. And Canada's told that America lets people die in the streets, that we have people dying in the streets. Well, we're not like, our healthcare isn't like America, where people are dying in the streets. And obviously, they don't understand that we don't turn people away at hospitals. But she said that her good friend broke his hip, and he's, with a broken hip, has been waiting over 6 months to have hip surgery, right, and is on a tremendous amount of painkillers and saving money to come to America to get the surgery done because he's on a waiting list.
Well, it's that's, you're going to see more and more of that, and where the whole argument that people can't be seen for their health care in America, I've never seen it. You go to any emergency department, they don't turn people away. If you come to our office, we don't turn people away. I mean, we work things out. We have things. I see patients that I know can't pay just because it's the right thing to do, and most doctors in America already do that. So it's an argument that I don't think really has a lot of weight, and then it's not based in reality. That
yeah, it seems like the physicians are kind of caught between a rock and a hard spot. You're trying to deliver the health care, and you want to get everyone that you can. Right. And at the same time, it sounds like your hands get tied at times, although you want to give the care. The bureaucracy may be upholding, or delaying, delivery there.
If this law goes through, I think there'll be more government interference in between the doctor-patient relationship. My mother's friend in Canada did say, well, the government made it to where doctors can only see you for 15 minutes. An office visit cannot be more than 15 minutes in the areas of Canada, and that lots of doctors have left, that they've had a shortage of doctors, and they've left to come to America to practice. Do you foresee something like this happening? Well,
we would always hope not. I mean, I think that's always been the great thing about American medicine is that you go through a lot of training to get to the point when you should be able to see patients and make the best judgments for their well-being and get them the services that they require so that they'll have optimal health. That's the key, and that's the goal. And I think we've always done a really good job about doing that. And most of us don't pay attention to what kind of insurance they have or their ability to pay. Once they get to see us, we're more concerned about taking care of them and their needs and getting them through to optimal health. With that said, the more whatever you want to call it, red tape, any whatever regulations, rules, it does become burdensome, and it becomes draining on physicians every time they turn around when there's more and more things placed upon us. We must do this, we must do that. I mean, at some point in time, especially if you're an older physician who can retire soon, you're going to retire very soon because you're not going to put up with that. And I think that's this is the thing that isn't really talked about here, is that if Obamacare comes into play, anybody that's really close to retirement, those physicians, I think, are going to retire because they just won't. They're not going to start up. So hence, we might already start seeing a shortage of doctors. Do you think? I think what's going to happen is people are going to see more mid-levels. They're going to see less than. They're going to be seen first by people who don't have degrees, but who are mid-level providers who make decisions that they weren't, and their supervision, I think, is going to be a little shaky. That's just my opinion. I think we're going to become a mid-level provider
like
in this
nurse
country.
Practitioners.
Nurse practitioners. I think you're going to, physicians' assistants. Not that they're in their place, that they're very good and they do a very good job, but I just think you're going to end up seeing a lot more of those folks who didn't do the training and have the background.
It reminds me of the experience when I was in the Philippines. I had a toothache, went to the dentist office, and the receptionist sat me in the chair, and she pulled out a drill. I said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "Well, I'm going to drill on your tooth." I said, "Are you a dentist?" She says, "No, but I know how to do this." I said, "I'll wait." Well, Scott, this has
Hope
been
we don't come to that.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you here today and talking about the future of the healthcare and where we're at now. And we appreciate you being with us on the show.
It's been my pleasure. It's a great opportunity to talk to you.
We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. We have been visiting today with Scott Joyner on the state of healthcare in America. That was really interesting stuff. It's one thing about healthcare, we often don't think about the need for healthcare until we're there. We're there in the steps of the doctor or the hospital trying to get treated. And it's interesting to see that what we currently have going on right now with Obamacare probably is not going to work unless we get some better solutions out there.
Right. My personal opinion is that I feel that something needs to be done with these escalating costs, but perhaps stimulating competition would be better than having government interference.
I think the best place to start is to say, no, Congress, you're part of this plan. You are part of the, whatever you come up with, you're subject to this insurance plan, also this healthcare system, and you cannot exempt yourself.
Well, didn't Obama say that we were going to have their plan? At the very beginning, I think he was tooting and said that we're going to have the same plan that our Congress has.
Yeah.
So, and then Congress has exempted themselves from our plan. So it's very interesting. Being one that is definitely reliant due to injury on health care for my entire life, it can be quite a worry. And what am I going to do to make sure I'm receiving it in my twilight years?
So we started the show today talking about self-reliance, being prepared, making sure that we're, when the unexpected happens, that we're not caught off guard. And with our economy as it is, I see that this is a key to surviving in our world. We never know when the next disaster is coming, when the next flood, the next hurricane, the next earthquake. We only know that it will happen. We just don't know when, and we don't know where. There was a reminder, one of my son's friends' family, the dad lost his job, and he had been out of work for 2 years. And, but this family was prepared. They actually had enough in savings. They had, put a food supply together, and they were able to make things work out because they had saved in the early days to make sure that if the unexpected happened, that they wouldn't be caught off guard.
They were prepared. My mother used to can foods, I remember, or jar, in those ball jars, fruits and vegetables. And we always had a lot of them in our garage. I don't see that as much anymore, but it sounds like this family was prepared. What do you suggest, Alan, to help people become more self-reliant and even financially reliant to get out of debt?
Well, yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think debt is bondage. A person that owes other people money, is subject to that person showing up on the doorstep and telling them what they want to do.
Right.
And, there's nothing worse than feeling that you're in bondage to somebody else. And so if you're in some type of financially strapped situation, first place I would start is, what do I need to do to get out of this? I met a guy who, he was hiding out from the bill collectors, afraid to go back to work because he knew the bill collectors would show up on his doorstep, taking whatever he earned out. And I said, look, you're going to go through your life. 5 years from now, you'll be in the same situation unless you deal with this today. And so dealing with, getting debt resolved, getting the financial house in order is paramount to becoming self-reliant. And then beyond that, there's other resources that you need to really look at. So aside from looking at debt, if you're not sure how to do it, seek a professional advice. There's a lot of people out there that can help you work through the financial planning. Spend less than you earn. It's always living under your own means is a good way to, put some stuff away and set a monthly budget. save a little money on the side. And remember to pay yourself. When you get your paycheck, one of the first things you should do is pay yourself into a savings account. And then you can spend the rest for the needs.
Be prepared.
Be prepared. And then don't invest more money than you can afford to lose. That's one of the mistakes. People want to go on the quick rich scheme. There is no such thing as a get rich quick scheme. If it's too good to be true, it is.
Yeah.
Stay away from it. This is Alan Olson's America Dreams. We've enjoyed having you with us the last hour and talking about healthcare. And stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be having an exciting guest, Sanjay Subheader of Storm Ventures, and he's going to be talking about the state of venture capital here in Silicon Valley. We got some good news ahead, and we'll be on that page next week.